The air in the upscale Seoul restaurant was thick with unspoken tension, a stark contrast to the elegant, minimalist decor. Kim Min-jun, a man whose name echoed with both respect and fear in the city's shadowed corners, sat across from his new wife, Lee So-yeon. She was a mere 22, a stark youthfulness against his 48 years. They had been married for less than a week, a union orchestrated by families rather than affection. Min-jun, known throughout the underworld as the Ice King for his unyielding demeanor, raised a delicate porcelain teacup to his lips. His gaze, devoid of warmth, settled on So-yeon. "So-yeon," he began, his voice flat, emotionless, a carefully modulated monotone that sent a shiver down the spines of hardened men, yet left So-yeon's expression unreadable. "I've been alone for 28 years. My family insisted upon this marriage, a formality for appearances. You are my wife now, by title alone. But understand this clearly. You will live in my house. You will adhere to my rules, and you will not, under any circumstances, interfere with my life or my business. There will be no love between us, no affection, no emotional entanglement. This is merely a name, a status, and nothing more." The words hung in the air, a chilling pronouncement of her new reality. Min-jun expected tears, perhaps a defiant outburst, or at the very least a flicker of fear. He had seen it all before. But So-yeon merely met his gaze, her own eyes steady, a quiet depth within them. She didn't flinch, didn't argue, didn't even shed a single tear. Instead, she offered a slow, deliberate nod. "I understand, Min-jun-si," she replied, her voice soft, almost a whisper, yet imbued with an unexpected firmness. "I will be a good wife in name. I will fulfill my duties as you define them." Her calm, almost serene acceptance was a response Min-jun had not anticipated. It was an anomaly in his world of calculated reactions and predictable emotions. A flicker, almost imperceptible, of something akin to curiosity sparked in his ice-cold eyes. He watched her for a moment longer, a silent assessment, before pushing a small black velvet box across the polished table. The box slid smoothly, coming to rest directly in front of her. "Wear this," he commanded, his voice still devoid of warmth, yet holding a subtle edge of something unidentifiable. Inside the box, nestled on a bed of dark satin, lay a simple, elegant diamond pendant. Its single, brilliant stone caught the dim light, sparkling with understated beauty. "It signifies your position," he added, a further clarification of the transactional nature of their relationship. So-yeon reached out, her slender fingers brushing the cool metal of the box, then carefully lifting the pendant. The diamond felt heavy, a tangible symbol of her new, detached existence. As she fastened the delicate chain around her neck, her gaze met Min-jun's once more. A subtle, almost imperceptible smile played on her lips, ghost of an expression that vanished as quickly as it appeared. Min-jun felt a strange unease ripple through him, a sensation he hadn't experienced in decades. It was a fleeting moment of unsettling uncertainty, a tiny crack in the impenetrable fortress of his composure. What had just transpired? He had laid out the terms of their loveless marriage, expecting a broken spirit. Yet he was met with an unyielding calm and a smile that hinted at depths he couldn't fathom. Sometimes, the quietest hearts hold the most surprising strength. Before we delve deeper into this unfolding drama, take a moment to subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments below where you're watching from. To understand the enigmatic dance between Kim Min-jun and Lee So-yeon, one must first delve into the vastly different worlds that forged them. Kim Min-jun's origins were steeped in the harsh realities of Seoul's underworld. He had not sprung from the polished towers of Gangnam, but from its rougher, older districts, where the lines between legitimate business and illicit operations blurred into a dangerous tapestry. His family, the formidable Black Lotus Syndicate, had cast a long shadow over the city for generations, founded by his ruthless grandfather. Min-jun was not merely born into this world. He was meticulously sculpted by it from a tender age, groomed to inherit its power and perpetuate its legacy. His upbringing was a stark regimen of discipline and unyielding expectation. Loyalty was paramount, strength was non-negotiable, and ruthlessness was a cultivated art. Emotions, those inconvenient human frailties, were systematically excised, deemed weaknesses that could compromise control and invite vulnerability. He knew no normal childhood of innocent play or adolescent rebellion. His entire existence was a relentless pursuit of power, a constant exercise in control, both over others and, more critically, over himself. This rigorous conditioning had forged him into Ice King Kim, a name that commanded fear even among his most hardened adversaries, and unwavering respect from his own vast network of men. He was a master strategist, rarely sullying his hands with direct action, yet his decrees were absolute, his will unchallengeable. His personal sanctuary was a sprawling, minimalist mansion nestled in the affluent Pyeongchang-dong neighborhood, a fortress of solitude that felt less like a home and more like a monastic retreat, a reflection of his isolated existence. Then there was Lee So-yeon. Her world was a universe away from Min-jun's cold dominion. She hailed from a small conservative town in Jeollanam-do, a tranquil province far removed from the glitzy chaos and moral ambiguities of Seoul. Her family ran a traditional guest house, a place steeped in local customs and quiet hospitality. Her upbringing was characterized by quiet respect, a deep-seated focus on community, and an unwavering adherence to family honor. She was taught the virtues of duty, the importance of supporting her family, and the value of education, though the latter was always balanced with the expectation of finding a suitable husband. The marriage arrangement that brought these two disparate lives together was a relic of a bygone era, yet still prevalent in circles where status and tradition outweighed individual choice. So-yeon's family had faced unforeseen financial difficulties, a common vulnerability in their quiet rural life. It was at this vulnerable juncture that Min-jun's family, ever conscious of their lineage and the need for a pure and respectable bride for their aging, unmarried leader, approached So-yeon's parents. For Min-jun's family, it was about legitimizing their public image and securing a successor. For So-yeon's family, it was a lifeline, a chance to avert ruin. So-yeon, ever dutiful, agreed to the union. She knew little about Min-jun beyond the hushed whispers of his fearsome reputation, a man whose name was spoken with a mixture of awe and apprehension. From the outset, the air between them was thick with unspoken tension, a palpable fear that So-yeon struggled to conceal. The hushed conversations her family had about Min-jun's business, a euphemism for the syndicate, and his reputed temper, had painted a chilling portrait. She was stepping into a world utterly alien to her, a realm of shadows, unspoken rules, and dangerous undercurrents. She was acutely aware of the chasm that separated her quiet, principled life from his complex, perilous existence. Min-jun, for his part, viewed her as little more than a necessary obligation, another cog in the meticulously constructed machinery of his empire. He saw a solution to a familial demand, a name to fill a role, nothing more. The initial encounters were marked by an almost unbearable silence, punctuated only by his terse commands or her quiet, deferential responses. It was a marriage of convenience, steeped in duty for one and strategic necessity for the other. Yet beneath the surface, a fragile tension simmered, foreshadowing the seismic shifts yet to come. Min-jun's life had been a meticulously constructed fortress of solitude for 28 years, a stark testament to his chosen path. He had cultivated an existence devoid of genuine connection, where women were either ephemeral distractions, strategic tools in his intricate games of power, or potential threats to his carefully guarded emotional landscape. He systematically pushed everyone away, convinced that any emotional entanglement was a weakness, a chink in the formidable armor he had painstakingly forged around himself. His coldness wasn't a sudden development, it was a deeply ingrained characteristic, honed by a lifetime of rigorous conditioning. He recalled a vivid childhood memory, a scene where a young Min-jun, perhaps no older than 7, had dared to show sadness after his beloved pet dog had died. His grandfather, a man whose presence commanded absolute obedience, had loomed over him, his voice a low, gravelly reprimand. "Men of our family, do not cry, Kim Min-jun. Emotions are for the weak. They will be your downfall." The words had seared themselves into his young mind, extinguishing the last embers of childish vulnerability. Later, in his teenage years, there had been a brief, awkward attempt at a normal romantic relationship, an anomaly in his otherwise regimented life. He had gone on a date to a bustling local market with a girl from a neighboring district. The unfamiliar emotions, the simple joy of shared laughter, the strange flutter in his chest, it had all been too overwhelming, too disorienting. He had walked away mid-date, leaving her bewildered, retreating into the familiar, sterile comfort of his isolation. He simply couldn't process the unfamiliarity of human connection. His business dealings were a masterclass in ruthless efficiency. He once orchestrated a complex negotiation that required the sacrifice of a loyal, long-serving subordinate to secure a crucial deal. The man had been a pawn, his demise a necessary step in Min-jun's strategic chess game. Min-jun had signed the order, his face impassive, showing no remorse, no hesitation. The man's loyalty, his years of service, meant nothing against the cold calculations of power and profit. This was the man So-yeon had married. Now, living within the expansive, minimalist confines of his mansion, So-yeon quietly observed his routine. He ate alone, his meals delivered to his study by the house staff. He worked late into the night, his presence a distant, almost spectral force within the grand structure. He rarely spoke beyond issuing terse commands, his voice echoing in the cavernous halls. The house, despite its opulent size, felt profoundly empty, a mausoleum of unexpressed emotions. So-yeon quickly became familiar with the subtle humiliations and pervasive neglect that defined her existence within his world. She would meticulously prepare meals, often with the help of the household cook, only for Min-jun to eat in his study, or arrive so late that she was expected to have already finished her own dinner. He rarely acknowledged her effort, let alone her presence. The rules of the house were largely unspoken, conveyed not through direct instruction, but through the cold, efficient demeanor of Mrs. Park, the head housekeeper, or through her own trial and error. A misplaced item, a deviation from the rigid schedule, would be met with Mrs. Park's disapproving glance, a clear signal of Min-jun's exacting standards. So-yeon learned to navigate this silent labyrinth with quiet precision. Public appearances were particularly taxing. At family gatherings, Min-jun would introduce her with a perfunctory nod, a brief, almost dismissive gesture, before turning his attention to more pressing matters, leaving her to navigate the intimidating hierarchy of his extended family alone. She was an accessory, a silent figure meant to fill a role, not to engage or interact. Despite the profound loneliness and the emotional neglect that permeated her new life, So-yeon maintained her calm. She focused on her duties, meticulously learning the intricate operations of the household, quietly observing everything. She did not complain, did not outwardly show any sign of distress. Yet, in the quiet sanctuary of her own thoughts, an internal monologue began to unfold. It revealed not just a growing understanding of Min-jun's profound indifference, but also a dawning realization of the deep-seated issues that plagued him. She began to see his cruelty, not as a personal affront, but as a symptom of his inability to connect, a manifestation of the cage he had so carefully built around himself. The initial shock of his marriage declaration, his cold pronouncement of a loveless union, started to make a chilling kind of sense. This wasn't merely about his indifference. It was about his utter incapacity for human warmth, a truth far more complex and tragic than simple unkindness. She was beginning to see the true nature of the Ice King. A sudden, urgent call from her hometown shattered the fragile routine So-yeon had established. Her younger sister, Ji-hai, was seriously ill, a rare and aggressive condition requiring immediate and incredibly expensive surgery. Desperation, a raw and unfamiliar emotion in her carefully controlled life, seized So-yeon. She knew, despite Min-jun's pronouncements, that only he possessed the resources to save Ji-hai. With a heart pounding against her ribs, she decided to approach him, to break the unspoken rules and appeal to the man she was bound to. She found him in his study, a cavernous room dominated by dark wood and an air of impenetrable authority. With carefully chosen words, she explained the situation, her voice trembling slightly despite her efforts to maintain composure. She spoke of Ji-hai's innocence, her youth, appealing to a sense of family, even if it was her own, a family Min-jun had so coldly dismissed. Min-jun listened, his face a mask of utter impassivity. Not a muscle twitched, not a flicker of empathy crossed his eyes. When she finished, the silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. "Your family is not my responsibility, So-yeon," he stated, his voice flat, devoid of any warmth or concern. "You married into my family. Your old life is behind you." His words were like shards of ice, designed to sever her last ties to her past, to her identity before him. He dismissed her pleas, his tone carrying an implicit accusation that she was trying to exploit him, to take advantage of their unusual arrangement. For the first time since entering his house, So-yeon felt a surge of defiance. "But she is my sister," she countered, her voice rising slightly, a crack in her carefully constructed calm. "My only family outside this house. Please, Min-jun-si, I beg you." She tried to appeal to his humanity, to find some dormant spark of compassion within his cold exterior. She looked into his eyes, searching for anything, any sign that he might understand, might care. Min-jun's gaze hardened. "You forget your place," he said, his voice dropping to a dangerously low register that promised swift and unpleasant consequences. He then made a calculated, cruel move, one that demonstrated the chilling extent of his power and his absolute control. He picked up his phone, made a brief, terse call in hushed tones, and then hung up, his eyes never leaving So-yeon's. "I have just ensured that no hospital in Seoul will treat your sister without full payment up front," he announced, his tone devoid of triumph, merely stating a fact. Your limited contacts will prove useless. You will find no help elsewhere. He wanted to show her, in no uncertain terms, who held all the power, who controlled every lever of influence in this city. He had effectively condemned her sister, not with a direct act, but with a chilling display of his far-reaching authority. So-yeon stood there, stunned, the air knocked out of her lungs. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Her heart plummeted, a cold dread replacing the frantic hope. She was devastated, but as the initial shock subsided, a strange steely resolve began to form within her. She was not broken. As she turned and walked out of his study, her usually soft eyes, now devoid of tears, held a glint, sharp and uncompromising. She realized, with a chilling clarity, that Min-jun would never change. His coldness was not a facade. It was absolute. Her only path forward was to fight back, not for revenge, but for survival, for her sister. The name-only marriage was not merely a prison. It was a torture chamber, and he had just tightened the chains, sealing her fate, or so he thought. She would not let him. So-yeon began her quiet rebellion, a meticulously planned campaign, waged in the silent halls of Min-jun's mansion. Her first strategic move was to discreetly gain access to Min-jun's personal study whenever he was away, a frequent occurrence given his demanding schedule. She wasn't looking to steal or to cause immediate disruption. Her objective was far more subtle and insidious. She observed his organizational methods, memorizing the precise placement of documents, the categories of his files, the subtle nuances of his cluttered yet systematic desk. She studied his financial ledgers, absorbing the complex layers of his legitimate businesses, interwoven with the shadowy threads of his underworld operations. She paid close attention to his communication patterns, noting the names of his key contacts, the frequency of his calls, and the tone of his emails. Every detail, no matter how small, was a piece of the puzzle she was painstakingly assembling. Her next step involved building relationships, a delicate dance of subtle infiltration. She began with the household staff, particularly Mrs. Park, the stoic housekeeper, and Mr. Lee, Min-jun's personal driver. Both had been with the Kim family for decades, silent witnesses to Min-jun's chilling isolation. So-yeon approached them not with complaints or pleas for sympathy, but with genuine kindness and respect. She offered to help Mrs. Park with minor tasks, listened patiently to Mr. Lee's rambling stories of old Seoul, and showed a sincere interest in their lives outside the confines of the mansion. She observed their needs, offering small gestures of consideration that slowly chipped away at their professional reserve. From their casual conversations, she gleaned invaluable insights into Min-jun's habits, his routines, his preferences, and even his occasional, almost imperceptible vulnerabilities. She learned about his preferred routes, his meeting places, and the names of his most trusted and perhaps most disgruntled associates. Driven by a keen intellect and an innate talent for numbers, So-yeon began to learn the intricate system that underpinned Min-jun's empire. She devoured financial reports left carelessly on his desk, absorbing the complexities of shell companies, offshore accounts, and the opaque structures designed to obscure the true nature of his wealth. She identified key associates, understanding their roles and their loyalties, and, crucially, she began to spot weak points in the seemingly impenetrable fortress he had constructed. Her goal wasn't destruction, but leverage. She sought to expose his vulnerabilities, to create a situation where he would be forced to help her sister, and in doing so, secure her own future independence. She understood that Min-jun's world was built on reputation and fear. If she could chip away at either, even incrementally, she had a chance. The tension in the mansion, though outwardly calm, began to build, a silent hum beneath the surface. So-yeon started making small, calculated moves. An anonymous tip, carefully crafted to avoid direct traceability, was sent to a minor government agency, detailing a seemingly insignificant regulatory breach by one of Min Jun's legitimate companies. It was designed to cause a minor headache, a distraction from his larger operations. She subtly planted a rumor, a whisper of internal dissent among his lower-level associates, spread through Mrs. Park's unwitting gossip to Min Jun's head of security, creating a ripple of unease. These were not direct attacks, but carefully placed pebbles in the smooth machinery of his operations, designed to divert his attention, to make him look inward, to introduce a subtle element of chaos. Meanwhile, she initiated an online campaign, a discreet crowdfunding effort to raise money for Jihai's surgery. She used her own limited savings to kickstart it, appealing to the kindness of strangers. But the progress was agonizingly slow. She knew she needed a faster, more decisive solution. The clock was ticking, and with each passing day, the stakes grew higher. The tension mounted as she moved closer to a direct confrontation, or, more accurately, a strategic exposure. She was preparing to unleash the full force of her quiet intelligence against the Ice King. The stage was set, not in a grand theater, but in the sterile, high-stakes arena of Min Jun's world. Weeks had passed since So-yeon's desperate plea and Min Jun's chilling refusal, weeks in which her silent rebellion had meticulously gathered its forces. Now, the moment of reckoning was at hand. Min Jun was deep in a high-stakes meeting, a tense gathering with rival gang leaders, negotiating a major territory deal that would solidify his syndicate's dominance. The air in the opulent, windowless room was thick with unspoken threats and calculated smiles. Each man a predator vying for advantage, just as Min Jun, with his characteristic cold precision, leaned forward to close the deal. A series of seemingly unrelated events, orchestrated by So-yeon with chilling accuracy, began to unfold. It started subtly, a ripple in the carefully controlled environment. A breaking news alert flashed across the screens of the rival leader's personal devices. A minor, yet embarrassing, regulatory violation by one of Min Jun's seemingly clean, legitimate companies. It was a detail so obscure, so specific, that it could only have been known by someone with intimate inside access. A murmur ran through the room, a collective eyebrow raised. The Ice King was known for his impenetrable facade, his flawless control. This was a crack. Simultaneously, a key piece of information, carefully planted by So-yeon, through Mrs. Park's unwitting gossip, to Min Jun's head of security, made its way to one of the rival bosses. The message, delivered with a casual air, was potent. Ice King Kim's new wife is proving to be problematic, distracting him. The seed of doubt was sown, questioning not just Min Jun's focus, but his very control over his own household, a critical aspect of his fearsome reputation. As Min Jun, his face still unreadable, subtly shifted to regain control of the volatile negotiation, So-yeon made her direct, decisive move. She sent him a very specific, encrypted message to his private, secure phone, a device known only to him and his closest, most trusted confidants. The phone, usually silent during such critical meetings, vibrated discreetly in his pocket. He glanced at the notification, a flicker of irritation crossing his features before he opened it. The message was simple, yet devastatingly precise. A detailed bank account number for Jihai's surgery, followed by a single, chilling sentence. The next news report will be about your offshore accounts, Min Jun. Min Jun's face, usually a mask of unyielding stone, showed a flicker of something akin to surprise, then a cold, dangerous fury, and finally, a dawning, terrifying realization. The problematic wife, the news report, the precise information that only he and his most trusted inner circle possessed, it all clicked into place with the precision of a well-oiled machine. He saw her calm, unreadable face from their very first dinner, her quiet nod, her soft but steady voice. He understood this was no meek, dutiful bride. She wasn't just a wife in name. She was a strategic force, a silent, calculating adversary who had been observing, learning, and planning. He couldn't afford a scandal, especially not now, with this critical deal hanging in the balance, his rivals watching for any sign of weakness. He looked at his phone, then across the table at the rival bosses, their eyes now alight with a new, speculative glint. He knew he had been outmaneuvered, at least for this moment. He ended the meeting abruptly, his voice a low growl, citing unforeseen personal matters that demanded his immediate attention. The rivals exchanged knowing glances, a subtle smirk playing on the lips of one. Min-jun's perfect facade had been breached, not by an enemy, but by his own wife. Min-jun returned to the mansion, the air around him crackling with suppressed rage and a reluctant, grudging respect. So-yeon was waiting in the main living area, seated calmly, a book open in her lap, though she wasn't reading. She looked up as he entered, her gaze steady, unflinching. He stared at her, a strange mix of anger and something akin to awe in his eyes. He didn't yell, didn't rage, didn't throw anything. His voice, when it came, was low, tight with controlled fury, yet tinged with an unexpected note of defeat. "The account number," he said, his eyes boring into hers. "How much?" So-yeon, without a hint of triumph or fear, stated the exact amount needed for Ji-hai's surgery, down to the last one. Without another word, Min-jun pulled out his phone, his fingers moving swiftly, making the transfer. The first thing he did, the very first act after being exposed and outmaneuvered, was to give her what she desperately needed. Not because he wanted to, not out of compassion, but because she had forced him to. She had played his own game, used his own rules, and won. The Ice King had been melted, not by warmth, but by the cold, precise fire of his wife's intellect. Ji-hai received the surgery she so desperately needed. The anonymous online campaign So-yeon had started, now boosted by the substantial, generous benefactor funds, provided a plausible cover story. So-yeon carefully managed the narrative, ensuring that her sister and family believed it was the kindness of strangers, rather than the reluctant hand of a mafia boss, that had saved Ji-hai. Her sister's recovery was slow but steady, a testament to So-yeon's quiet strength and unwavering determination. With Ji-hee out of immediate danger, a profound sense of relief washed over So-yeon, allowing her to finally breathe a little easier within the gilded cage of Min-jun's mansion. The marriage dynamic between Min-jun and So-yeon shifted profoundly, subtly but irrevocably. Min-jun still maintained his cold, impassive exterior, a lifetime of emotional repression not easily shed. Yet he no longer dismissed So-yeon. The casual indifference, the blatant disregard for her presence, was gone. In its place was a wary respect, a grudging acknowledgement of her intelligence and strategic prowess. He began to consult her on minor business matters, not seeking her opinion out of genuine collaboration, but almost as a test, a challenge. He would leave financial documents scattered on his desk, seemingly carelessly, almost daring her to look, to analyze, to comment. He was testing her limits, and perhaps his own. She had earned his grudging respect, a feat no one else in his life had ever truly achieved. He found himself, on occasion, observing her, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes, as if trying to decipher the enigma that was his wife. So-yeon, now with the financial security she had so cunningly secured, and a newfound confidence born from her successful gambit, began to carve out her own space, not just within the mansion, but in the world outside. She started a small, legitimate business. Drawing on her family's background and her own quiet passion for tradition, she launched an online platform dedicated to promoting traditional Korean crafts, sourcing products from artisans in rural areas, including her home province. She used her own savings, supplemented by the remaining funds from the benefactor account, carefully separating them from Min-jun's direct influence. It was a venture that allowed her to connect with her roots, to empower other small communities, and most importantly, to establish her own financial independence within the marriage. She was no longer merely Min-jun's wife. She was a businesswoman, a patron of culture, a woman with her own agency and purpose. They lived in an unusual peace, a truce born of mutual understanding rather than affection. There was no love, no warmth, not in the conventional sense between them. But there was a deep, unspoken understanding. Min-jun continued to rule his empire, his power unchecked, his reputation still formidable. Yet he now knew, with absolute certainty, that there was a powerful mind living under his roof, a mind capable of challenging him, a force that could, if provoked, unravel his carefully constructed world. He was no longer truly alone in the way he had been for 28 years. He had a silent partner, an unexpected intellectual sparring partner, who kept him on his toes, who forced him to be more careful, more strategic. Her presence, though devoid of emotional intimacy, filled a void he hadn't even realized existed, a void that had been the silent companion of his solitary reign. The story ends with So-yeon, a year later, thriving in her new venture. Her online platform was gaining traction, bringing forgotten crafts to a wider audience, and providing a stable income for numerous families. She stood on the balcony of the mansion, looking out at the Seoul skyline, a vibrant tapestry of lights and shadows. She reflected on her incredible journey. She hadn't sought love or affection from Min-jun. She had sought survival, dignity, and the means to protect her family. In the face of overwhelming power and deliberate cruelty, she had found her strength in the most unlikely of places. In her quiet intelligence, her unwavering resolve, and her ability to understand and manipulate the very system that sought to crush her. In doing so, she had subtly, yet profoundly, changed the Ice King in a way no one ever thought possible. He remained the formidable leader of the Black Lotus, but he was also a man who had been outsmarted by his own wife, a man who now carried a silent respect for the woman he had once dismissed as a mere obligation. Her story was a testament to resilience, to the quiet strength that can emerge from adversity, and to the profound truth that even in seemingly powerless situations, one can find the power to forge a new beginning.